Hi, everyone. I am here with RaeAnn Lovall, who has been kind enough to join us to discuss for our series on people leadership and how to make the function of a people team as impactful as it can be. Her own reflections on a topic that is very near and dear and top of mind for me, which is building a really effective culture, particularly amidst the shift to remote work and a lot of the turbulence over the last few years, and just in the general environment of operating a startup. Culture is a really key facet. And so we are lucky enough to have RaeAnn join us today. She is going to kick off with a presentation, then we're going to shift into questions and answers. I will guide some of the Q&A portion, but please chime in with any comments as questions, and I will pose those too. Take it away, RaeAnn.
Thanks, Serena. Thanks for having me. I'm very excited about getting to share what I've learned and hearing what others are learning as well. So I put together the slideshow just overviewing kind of my thoughts about creating a cohesive company culture amidst all the things that Serena mentioned, specifically to us being a startup and the opportunities and challenges that come with that, as well as dealing with the COVID pandemic and then really the shift to remote work. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the company and myself, and then kind of go into an overview of that culture discussion. So the company I work for is Homebase. We are in our 6th year, and we are a prop tech company, so property technology. We put smart building software into multifamily apartment buildings so that we connect the Wi-Fi network, the access control to all of the exterior doors, as well as the apartment unit doors, and then make every apartment a smart apartment so that the resident can control their living experience with an app. And one of the most exciting things that we've done so far is partner with Walmart. Walmart piloted an in-home delivery service in the past couple of years. And so we are the first multifamily partner to work with a company that is delivering directly into the unit. Walmart literally puts the groceries into the person's refrigerator. So that's been a very interesting thing to navigate, just as far as like the innovations in this industry. We grew out of the Kansas City Smart City Initiative. So our founder, Blake Miller, was a big part of that kind of city coalition to bring the streetcar and citywide Wi-Fi to Kansas City. And out of that, he kind of stepped back and realized that it's the buildings in the city that need to be smart to really enable the full smart city. So he started this company, a local general contractor helped him get started and has really been helpful in our growth. Our mission is to connect communities using technology so that people can remotely manage their home environment from afar. They can manage who gets in and out of the building. And then, like I said, bringing more services into the community and into the apartment. So let's say you are aging in place, you're going to have someone delivering your medications to you on a regular basis, and seeing kind of those same faces, those delivery people over and over again is one of our goals to really help create that sense of community as we bring those services to people in their homes. One of the biggest things that was a learning experience for me and that we navigated was we grew from a team of 12 to 50 employees in 2021. So the ramp up, the interviewing, I learned a lot about how we were presenting ourselves, defining our culture at 12, and then how we were able to, and in some ways not able to, really create that culture as we grew to 50 people, and how those 50 people influenced the culture. And I would say in the last 2 years, we've really been able to scale from just a few beta buildings, beta customers here in the Kansas City area, and now we're nationwide. We have over 6,000 units and have multiple customers that are now repeat customers. We're growing very quickly, and it's very exciting to be part of that growth. About me, I am from the Kansas City area. I have a picture here of my dog Charlie. She comes to work with me every day, and she actually, I think, is a big part of the culture. We have a dog-friendly environment, and that really impacted people's experience in the office when we shifted to that. So, I I I like that we do that. I think it made a huge impact. One of the things that Serena was asking me is kind of what are my goals, have been my goals, and are my goals moving forward. And so the first one really is that engagement. It's, we're all doing surveys, we're all asking, what do you want? We're all creating events and trying to get people to engage. And in a lot of ways, we've been able to do that really well with creative events. And I think Slack is a great tool that we've used, especially as we've gone more remote, for people to be able to interact, post questions. There's lots of work related channels, but then there are fun channels that I think give people kind of an outlet and ways to connect. And then one thing that I really was proud of our employees for was we, you know, gave them the opportunity to create their own um, events or clubs. And so we're a pretty small team, but we have a great office, and some employees got together and watched the Bob's Burgers movie and made burgers in the office. And that's just one example of kind of some of the fun things that they've done. We also rented an apartment down the street, and we use it for clients so they can experience our technology. And when we got it, we launched it, and we had a tea at the terrace event for the whole company, and everyone dressed up and just had a nice kind of launch of the apartment. So there's been some really fun things related to, I would say, the character and like uniqueness of our employees, and then also to the company and the technology. The second thing is being a young company. 2 years ago, there were a lot of policies and processes that we were still amassing, working out, figuring out, and that has been a huge accomplishment over the past couple of years, getting not only from an administrative, benefits, all of the people related processes, but just how we deliver our product. I might be in a bit of a unique role because I started in customer success, and I've been really involved in the product, and as at the executive level, just very involved in the strategy of the company going forward. So I still have a lot of involvement in how each team is operating and the processes that are being developed to, you know, um, improve efficiencies in delivering our product. The next thing that has been really important to me and still is DEI. So diversity, equity, and inclusion. I'm a member of the Mid America LGBT Chamber and have put a lot of time into researching employee resource groups and bringing speakers in. We held a company kind of brainstorming session about what does DEI mean to us and the employees. And then I took that and created a plan and kind of a strategy around how we wanted to move forward with DEI. So that's still really important. We have a Women Plus ERG, Employee Resource Group, which meets quarterly and then kind of socially monthly, just to share those experiences and think about ways that we can improve experiences or improve the work experience for those employees. And then lastly, I think the thing that I take most pride in and put a lot of time and effort into is having difficult conversations around DEI and just around collaboration and working with other humans in general. There's a lot of there are a lot of times where people just need to vent, and then there are times where you really need to encourage, empower, and coach them to have a difficult conversation and to really address the issue head on. Even today, I have some female employees who had a frustrating encounter, and all of them were basically saying, we need to bring someone in. We need to have a speaker talk about unconscious bias or whatever topic related to this, like just assuming that the issue was that a woman would take notes in a meeting. It's a pretty typical situation that comes up. And my thoughts were, if we have a speaker come in and we do something general about unconscious bias, everyone just assumes that they're not the problem, and they don't have that awareness or that realization that, oh yeah, in that meeting I was part of that problem. And so I'm really of the mind that it's those one-on-one conversations, those daily interactions where you really just human to human say, hey, the way that you said that or expressed that or had that expectation has this impact on me and makes me feel this way, and I just want you to know that, so we can work together to maybe do things differently in the future. And so empowering employees to have those difficult conversations is something I think is really effective, helps them grow as employees, and something that I can do well to support them as the chief people officer. So the culture at Homebase, I think when Serena and I were kind of planning for this, she helped me realize that our culture is really composed of three things I have here on my notes. One is about 25% of the culture is that people are there because we have a cool, innovative product. We're a startup. We're doing something that they maybe wouldn't have the opportunity to do somewhere else. They can influence the direction of the product and the company. There's an opportunity for advancement that might be more accelerated than at other companies. And we have a cool startup environment. Our office is open and we allow dogs. We have a Pop-A-Shot. We have a TV the size of a wall. There's lots of fun, cool things that bring people into the space and give them kind of excitement about the company. So I think that's where I think about the recruitment part of culture. And every time I did an intro interview for that hiring phase we went through, culture was the number one thing that everyone asked about. Doing really hundreds of interviews, and the initial conversation is, what is the culture like? Can I be myself? Can I grow? Can I problem solve? If I see something that needs to be fixed, will I have the resources and the support to go fix it? And I really, I think, had a huge impact as chief people officer and as that first interviewer to embody the excitement and the opportunity that they would have if they came to Homebase. And that was a huge part of the appeal, and us being able to recruit some really experienced and engaged and excited people who didn't want to just come and do a job. They wanted to come and build a company. And that was really fun to be a part of. The second part of the culture that I think is important is, and I said to Serena, I thought there was like 35% of what is made up the culture is really just the day-to-day experience. And so I put operations as, once we have those great people in the door, what is their daily experience of operating? What is their experience like in the office? What is their experience like creating these processes with their teammates, solving problems, addressing challenges, having those difficult conversations? How well are we able to support and facilitate the continual improvement of the operations and their, well-being, mental health, and ability to show up every day and keep building something that's really innovative when it can be very challenging, especially in the construction industry when we're managing projects with a lot of moving parts. So I think our ability to create an environment where they wanted to come and work together, and there were resources for them to work together, and there were the, kind of the interpersonal resources to work through those challenges well. And then the last part, which I think is what really retains people, is the transparency and communication from leadership. Is even when things are tough, which sometimes they are in a startup environment, that you're able to communicate clearly with employees and gain that trust and really maintain an open line of communication so that they know enough of what's going on that they, feel comfortable and secure. There was an example where we had to let actually 4 people go. We had kind of been seeing some patterns that were not productive, and having other employees, mentioning that, this person really isn't doing their part. And in reality, I think we kind of let it go too far, but we let those people go on one day. And then the end of that day, we called the entire company together and we said, this is, we've let all of these people go. We did it because we were getting feedback that they weren't being team players. They weren't communicating at the level that everyone else was communicating. And it's not fair to the rest of you, that we keep them on any longer. And we got so much positive feedback from the company that, they hadn't been in a company that would be that transparent about those events and why they happened, and giving them insight into, what was going on, instead of just kind of letting there be fallout and people talking about why, things happened or not. So that's one example of just that transparency and communication I feel like was really effective for us. And then kind of shaping the culture. I think that these were the things that really helped us, again, like that excitement and the appeal of the futuristic product and the opportunity to build something. Employees are really excited to work on technology that they're going to be able to influence, and not just come into a company, be a cog in the wheel, and be part of a large corporation that doesn't give them the opportunity to really be creative and influence the direction. Again, the daily experience. This is a picture of, like I said, the TV that's the size of a wall. We have this great kind of living room set up where we have our team meetings and everyone gathers around, and it feels very comfortable and homey and connected. And I think that definitely had a huge impact. The other thing is just having events in the office really helped to bring people into the office. When I was initially interviewing people in 2021, everyone was excited about coming back to the office. They had been home for COVID, and I was shocked to hear how many people wanted to come in and be around other people. And then, of course, over time, there's been that shift to, they really liked the flexibility. And so we have a policy that people need to be in the office 26 hours a week. And those hours should be focused on how they can collaborate together and how we can build culture together. So having meetings, anytime there's a time to get together with your team and really hammer things out, we want you in the office. But we're not at all strict about tracking those hours. So I think there's been a lot of slide towards people working remote more of the time. So we have an employee who just graduated from college, actually, and his fraternity had a pancake machine. You literally just put water in a bag, put it in this machine, push a button, and it puts out 2 pancakes. And so we started a Friday morning pancakes and prop tech event that I think kind of pulls people in. And then I had my director of people operations came up with a crock pot potluck. I always say that wrong, but it was a huge success. Everyone in the company made something in the crock pot, and we just had a huge lunch with everyone, and it really pulled people into the company. So I know there's always, the attempt to do events, and sometimes people are engaged and sometimes they're not, but I feel like really hit on some things that people got into. We have a Pop-A-Shot, and so during March Madness, we had a big tournament with different teams, and just having the space that we have and the environment that we had, it was really fun and easy to do that. And then communication, again, just being in a startup with ups and downs, and people, if you don't talk about it, there's still awareness. And then when there's awareness and no clear communication, there's a lack of trust and questions and rumors. And that's one area where I feel like we had to learn a lesson. We tried to maybe quote unquote protect employees from certain information, or we didn't want to give them too much information and then there be assumptions made. And I think any time we did that and we didn't address something head on, we really saw just kind of the rumor mill start. And it was better to just address it. And everyone's an adult, they know they joined a startup, they can handle whatever that information is. But kind of learning those lessons. Another lesson I think, Serena, you and I discussed was I really had the impression that being part of a startup, everyone would want to be kind of in the nitty gritty, like the hard work of making progress, and that we need to set really clear goals about how we could progress as a company and how they could progress their careers if we met certain goals. And so we made some, I wouldn't say promises, but we made, some statements that when the company gets to this point, these are the things that you can expect as far as your role, promotions, compensation, and, here's what it depends on. And when the company did not reach those goals and those, personal, they didn't actually see those personal benefits, there was not they didn't care why they weren't getting the raise or why they weren't getting the promotion. They really didn't cling to or identify with the overall goals. And that was a really big lesson for me to learn personally, because I just thought that startup mentality would be so pervasive that they would kind of be on board with whatever the consequences were. So that was a big lesson that I learned as far as how to motivate and connect the team. I think that was most of the things I wanted to cover. So I'm definitely open to any questions at this point.
RaeAnn, thanks so much for that. I was reflecting as you were speaking just on the sheer number of activities and areas in the company that you take on to support enabling a successful culture.
Mhm.
And see it framed like that is really helpful, because just my mind was shifting over the course of your conversation around just how much influence your role has in building a strong company culture. So I thank you very much for putting all that together.
Yeah.
The first question I have for you is, um, how can you tell that as you're putting in the work to build a strong company culture for Homebase, that it is working? What are some of the signs that you look at, that it is having an impact? And what are some of the, as a follow-on question, some of the outcomes of having a successful company culture in your experience?
Yeah, I think they're kind of the go-to answers for this. Like, you survey people, you get their feedback, kind of the textbook um, things that you should be doing as a leader. I really think it's the more kind of micro activities and interactions that I see as, evidence that we're doing the right things. One of those things is people that are just so engaged. They're working, they don't care how long they're working. They're in a state of flow. They're creating processes. They're, setting up automations and connections between departments. There are 2 or 3 employees that come to mind that just whatever problem is in front of them, they tackle it, they create a process, they collaborate, and they create a solution. And they know that that's safe and that's rewarded in the environment. There's not going to be a bunch of red tape or people, say, oh, but you're stepping on on my turf or whatever. So the fact that people are showing up and able to bring so much of themselves, I think, is evidence. The other is, there's always going to be conflict. And one of the things I'm most proud of, and I think shows how we've created a safe environment, is there was an issue with the founder of the company and a conflict with one of the employees. And the employee, came to me and was frustrated. And I, coached them on how to have the conversation, really in that situation, how to lead up and say, this is what you could have done better. I wish you would have done better as the founder. And here's what I could have done better. And next time, I hope we can, have this play out differently. And that conversation went so well for both of them. And I was able to, talk to the founder afterwards and say, it's fantastic. We have a culture where that employee feels they can come talk to you and have that conversation, even though I'm sure they were nervous and it felt uncomfortable. They know ultimately that they're invested in their own professional growth, the company, and creating, a place where they can express their needs and really help to improve communication. So I think those are a couple of kind of micro examples of seeing that there's a strong culture there.
Fantastic. My ears perked up initially in the presentation, and then also again now when you talk about communication as being something that has been a really successful part of building the company and a reflection and testament to the culture that you have helped create. I was curious if you had any advice for other chief people officers on how you created the expectation or the permission inside of your organization that when people need to have difficult conversations, they should think to come to you, and how also you expect for that to remain or what that to look like over time as a company continues to grow.
Sure. So when we had our first few hiring rounds, we started doing introductions. Like the whole company would come together and we would go around and do introductions. And I would always make a point to say, this is a startup. You're here because we think you have something to offer. We operate on a growth mindset, and we have to have a culture that offers psychological safety. You can say what you need to say. You can bring up questions. You can, feel safe. Not only safe, but it's your responsibility to bring that. And we want to hear that. And if I personally can do anything to, help your experience in any way, then please let me know. And if you're in a meeting or in an environment and you don't feel like that safety is happening, come and let me know, because we need to address it. Like, we need to have that conversation. When I joined the company 4 years ago, the initial CTO was just overwhelmed, and his response was always no. And it was very clear that anyone who brought up an idea or something counter to the way he had already started to do things, it was not safe to say that. And I knew immediately that needed to change, or the company wasn't going to be an innovative company. And the founder was really, on board and I think wanted to create that culture as well. So number one, just initially upon the first day, and then multiple, as many times as I possibly can, reiterating that this is a growth mindset culture. It's a safe culture. It's a place where we want your ideas. We want you to question. We want you to problem solve on your own, and reiterating that over and over again. And then when those things felt challenged, to encourage people to come to me so that we could address that.
Thank you for that. You just mentioned sort of a working relationship with the founder as well as with the CTO on creating culture inside of the organization. Do you have any best practices to share on what role founders and executives can play versus the role that you can play in enabling successful company culture, and also how to work together in that effort?
Yeah, so what I've learned is ultimately the culture is going to depend on the behavior and the attitudes of the founder or the top level leadership. And me being part of the executive team, I have been able to help shape kind of some of the ways that we've communicated or dealt with situations. And I think when you are a founder of a startup, there's so many pressures and there are so many frustrations, and there are a lot of opportunities to express those frustrations in ways that are hard for people to hear. And so to have someone that can hear those frustrations and then really dissect, okay, what is it that needs to be done? Or is there anything that needs to be done, first of all? But what is it that needs to be done and communicated in a positive way to the company so we can get the results that we need to get? And so, I mean, I don't really love this concept, but in some ways, being that like intermediary and that translator, so that, and really that's, I think, at least my personality type and probably the personality type of a lot of folks in people operations, is being that intermediary, being the person who can hear both sides, try to help get that information across the line so that there can be forward momentum and collaboration. So I think the things that I've learned most is whenever I can be a sounding board, be someone that someone can vent to. That's one thing I definitely started to realize, is to start a conversation saying, do you just need to vent? And that's fine. Like, this is a totally safe place to vent. I will listen. I will not say anything. I will not try to solve. Or do we need to take some action? And do you expect some sort of change to come out of this conversation? And that's been very helpful to be able to do that for everyone in the company, including the founder and the members of the executive team.
That's great. I heard you mention earlier that your role in the recruitment process is that you are somebody who either interviews everybody or is at least touching the process to this day in all for all candidates that you're hiring. I'm curious, do you have any tips for, I mean, how do you get involved in the process? When in the process do you get involved? And what do you see as your role in doing that successfully, even if they're not for jobs that are joining your function in the organization?
Yeah. So that has changed over time. When we were doing that major hiring effort, the company was so small that I was the person on the people team to be doing those initial interviews and to really share the characteristics of the culture and what we were building. As we hired more people on the people team, I was able to kind of hand off, this is the standard structured intro interview that we want to do. We decided on questions that would help with them, the applicant really understanding if this was a culture fit for them. And so definitely did hand that off at a certain point. And then we did make a lot of strides on hiring women and minorities and adding to the diversity of the company. And yet there were cases where I might be the only female who's interviewing for a really important role, or someone on a team that, it was just important to have multiple perspectives. And so I would say that's more of the case, is to add to the diversity of the interview process for that applicant, so that, number one, there's multiple perspectives, kind of assessing the fit, and then they also have the opportunity to see the diversity within the company.
That's very interesting. I hadn't thought about it that way before until you just mentioned it. That's a great point. The I guess stepping back a little bit, we've talked so much about some of the wins that you've had in supporting a thriving culture in which people feel psychologically safe and can express to anyone in the organization what they need to express in order to resolve a conflict or have a difficult conversation. Any lessons from things that you've tried that have not worked?
Hmm. I mean, I think there are just always going to be personality clashes where, I mean, I definitely have seen a couple of instances where employee number one is very collaborative, wants to have an open conversation, wants to get to a resolution, and employee number two is more prone to defensiveness. And um, I often attribute that to someone being overwhelmed. If someone is putting up a wall, they're not demonstrating a growth mindset, they're not collaborating as well as you would hope. I usually attribute that to just they have too much on their plate. They literally can't say yes anymore because they're just trying to, hold things together. And in that case, it's more successful to come in a supportive, um, role and say, how can we help rather than we need to do things differently or we need to fix this or whatever. So I think that's really challenging for two employees to do because the person who wants to be collaborative and make things work just experiences the defensiveness. And really working through that has been challenging because everyone's busy and everyone's working hard. Um, so would you mind repeating the question? Because I feel like I had another thought and it's eluding me.
Sure. I'm curious about sort of things that you've tried to do around supporting a successful culture that have been unsuccessful,
Mhm.
missteps that you've made and lessons that you've learned.
Okay. Yeah, I definitely think like trying to create there's a fine line between creating company-wide initiatives and goals and tying some sort of reward or some sort of, benefit or outcome to that. We've just being in a startup environment, you cannot guarantee a lot of these things. And especially through the past, few years with supply chain issues and the economy changing and the investment environment changing, there's just been a lot of things we've had to navigate that looking back, I would have communicated the growth expectations and the um yeah, just like you want to be optimistic, but you also want to be realistic. And so I just think there are some ways that we could have tempered our optimism so that people had better expectations and we didn't set ourselves up to, disappoint people in some ways, which is always going to happen. And in those cases, I feel like we've done the best we can to just communicate, like I said, and be transparent, but it's still a challenging for employees who have career goals and they may or may not be able to reach them in the time frame they thought they were going to. And that's a real, that's a valid frustration.
Yeah. And I mean, it sounds like such a big part of making Homebase's culture successful is around, like you said, a lot of the principles of communication. What do you have any, or have you considered putting in place any formal, not policies, but written expectations that that the employees or managers or leaders need to uphold around communication? Or is that something that still happens relatively informally?
Yeah, we actually have done that. We worked a lot on career tracks, and part of our career track for every role is what we're calling the home based persona, like the characteristics that a home based employee should embody and exhibit. And in that, um, one of them is communication, specifically feedback. So it's very specific. When someone gives you feedback, thank them for the feedback, be open, um, you know, realize that it was probably difficult for them to bring you that constructive feedback and make sure that you are receiving it with a sense of gratitude and not a sense of defensiveness. And when you're giving feedback, to remember that it's going to be challenging for that person to hear, to make sure that you're phrasing it in a way that's not blaming. It's eluding me right now, but I know we have like a couple of very specific phrases in that kind of guide the conversation in that way. And same thing with the growth mindset, just in general, like hearing new ideas and understanding, yeah, we might not be able to do that, but that might spur another idea, or that might be an idea for later, or just the openness to continually have that growth mindset. So yeah, we definitely have the characteristics of a home-based employee, and then the very specific actions or language that could be a guide for exhibiting that behavior.
That's really I find that really cool. How does that get taught, or how often does that get taught
Mhm.
inside of the organization?
Yeah. Again, I think it's a lot of me as a chief people officer bringing it up on a regular basis. Kind of like I said, those micro opportunities to influence interactions. It's also when someone is hired, we go through the career track in detail. We go through those home-based persona characteristics. We have them listed on our intranet, so anyone can go kind of look at what is expected of them. And then, anytime there's a review or an opportunity for promotion, also going back to that career track and really focusing on that. And then we also tied quarterly rewards, or awards, I should say. So every quarter, everyone voted on who demonstrated each of those characteristics the most over that quarter. And so really just trying to reinforce it in multiple ways, the values and the characteristics that we're looking for in employees.
Fantastic. And then two final questions for you as we begin to come to a close. One is, as you look ahead for your 2023 people operations roadmap, what are the big culture oriented priorities or undertakings that you have, or the goals that you have for yourself and your department?
Yeah, kind of going back to that, there are times where I feel like there's a going across the line from chief people officer to chief operating officer, and how are operations being set up and being developed to lessen the load on the people operations and the challenging conversations. And when you're in a startup or doing something innovative, you can't always depend on the process to work the same every time, and that's definitely been a challenge for us. But continuing to influence the best process so that there are fewer there's just less friction. That's a huge goal for me, and it always has been. So anytime I hear someone coming to me to vent about a challenge or a frustration, my first thought is like, what's the operational um, you know foundation of this, and how can we change this to eliminate this frustration? To there's way too many technological conveniences nowadays with integrations and automations and triggers and notifications that we're just too smart to keep running into the same operational challenges over and over again. And that's, like I was saying earlier, the people that I see utilizing those tools to create those efficiencies, that shows me that we have a culture of problem solvers with a growth mindset. And so just trying to help and support that is definitely one. The other is diversity and inclusion. I know that there's, especially in technology, we are, heavy on male employees, and the female employees are often the only woman in the room, or one of few women in the room. And so continuing to recruit women is and minorities in general, but at this point in the company, I feel like that's a major goal that we need to address. And then really it's tied a lot to the success of the company and how we grow, but just improving benefits. There are so many additional benefits that I would like to offer employees, that just matching 401k or student loan assistance, like things that would not be difficult for us to do once we get to the point where we have the resources to do them. So just making sure that those are priorities as we get to that level.
Fantastic. Well, we are just coming to an end here. Are there any final thoughts or things that I didn't ask you about that you wanted to be able to express before we wind down?
Not that I can think of. I really appreciate the conversation. It's been fun. It's been nice, over the past few weeks preparing for this with you, to really have some time to be introspective about the growth and the accomplishments over the past couple of years. So I just really want to thank you for inviting me to do this, and it's been really fruitful for me and satisfying for me. So thank you so much.
Oh, I'm so glad. My pleasure. And thank you so much for doing this with me. This will be available as a recording for anybody who wants to rewatch this, or anybody who wasn't able to attend. I will share this out afterwards. Well, thank you very much, RaeAnn, for your time, and hopefully we'll be in touch soon.
Thank you, Serena.